Well, welcome to Personal Finance. My name's Jim Parker. I'll be your instructor for the term. This will probably be the format that we'll stick with. It's There's different ways of doing this, but YouTube, um, whatever. I've got the premium version, so I don't get the nagging ads before and after. My apologies to you if you do. But in terms of efficiency and programs and work and stuff, I tend to prefer the YouTube solution. It just as opposed to some of the Blackboard things, it seems like we have more trouble with some of the other podcast type things. So the typical format will be once a week. I'll put out the slides, and also I'll have a lecture to kind of accompany that and kind of expand upon it. This course does not need to be that difficult for you. Most people who apply themselves end up with a pretty good grade. I mean, if you don't get an A, it's because you you didn't do some of the material. So anyway, it's all up to you. Um, well, I'll go through the syllabus and I'll look at the we'll look at the grading elements, but I think you won't have a tough time with it as long as you keep up to date and kind of apply yourself. The thing about this course too is that a lot of it is not just do you get, some college credit, but regardless of what discipline you're studying or frankly whatever you do in life, personal finance, there's so many people who don't understand it, at least when they're younger. People tend to understand it when they get older, but time value of money, too little, too late. They don't have time enough to act upon it. There's simple steps that you can take or lessons you can learn early on um, without having to actually experience the pain. I came from a military background. They talk about practice bleeding. You don't need to do that. If you could see somebody else's experience, you don't need to experience it yourself because there's all sorts of things in personal finance that get pretty deep. We'll talk about the syllabus tonight, and we'll just go through the first chapter. So again, this thing will run about an hour. It's pretty low threat, but I think there's some pretty good information in here. A little bit about me. Um, Raised Vizslas. I've got a bunch of property out here at the base of Pioneer Peak, old tractors and stuff. So whatever. I prefer to run the old Caterpillar stuff, more Vizslas. Or one of my daughters, I've got a couple of them over in picked up. These are Hungarian Vizslas, if you don't know, and this is actually in Budapest. Horses. One of the primary reasons I moved out here was because of the riverbed, and so I raise horses and raise bird dogs as well, ducks, sheep. Um, what else we got going? In fact, there's puppies being born right now, purebred Hungarian Vizslas. So pretty cool. I used to fly F4s, and then these are kind of ancient. I mean, I'm not that old, but they were pretty old when I got to them. I was privileged to get in on the last end of that, and then I flew F-15Es afterwards. Obviously, a more current jet, but anyway, pretty cool. I was a backseater. Yak 52, got one of these. Got a Satabria too, but these are kind of cool because they're actually using these in Ukraine again. They put a guy in the back with a shotgun or something and blasting drones out of the air. Um, this was, golly, who was this? I think this is Avi. This was several years ago. She's since moved on. This is out on the river. Ran a campground here to kind of displace all the squatters and riffraff that were out here. It was kind of a big deal. People used to be. It was kind of nasty. And anyway, liability and a bunch of other issues. I kind of eventually had to shut down the campground, but there's plenty of room. People camp on the other side of the bridge now. So this has got a big horse arena and some other stuff going on. Um, Pigs, cattle, yeah, way too much work. Sheep are far easier. I do raise a lot of ducks now. Pheasant, ah, they tend to want to die. I'll still bring up some pheasant, but they're kind of harder to raise. But consistently, I've been raising Vizslas for, I don't know, 15 years or so. Um, got an MBA, PhD. I worked, I did 23 years in the military. But it was kind of a strange career because I only flew for, I don't know, the first half, maybe a little more. And then went to Europe and started doing that. In order to stay in Europe, I had to diversify. After I got out of that, I went to work for a soul crushing corporation, Booz Allen, the whole corporate thing, just as bad as you read about. Anyway, I also have a real estate license. I did. It's dormant now because I was just too busy. I was doing other stuff. I didn't really like the real estate gig so much. I like investing in real estate, but selling it, yeah, not so much. But even while I was in the military, I worked because I was in Europe. I got involved in military sales, so it was very, took advantage of my business education, and we got involved in some really interesting stuff down in Luxembourg. We sell helicopters, get helicopters from some of the Eastern, whatever. Uh, I guess it was Lithuania, places out in the Baltics. Still have a bunch of friends out there, but anyway. And then these helicopters would find their way to the Middle East, primarily Afghanistan. Connect River Ranch, I've since retitled that. It's now just Parker Ranch. When I was running a campground, it was kind of sketchy. A lot of weird stuff went on, so I didn't want my name associated with it. Now that that's closed down, it's regular Parker Ranch. So this was the property. I mean, if in terms of complex real estate things, I mean, this is all accreted land. So it was started out at 78 acres, ended up being about 100. Split it up in three different sections to develop it. I mean, all this stuff. If you learn how to do real estate, I have since bought another parcel a little further downriver, massive. It's 338 acres. So anyway, what I try to do is, you know, accumulate money in the stock market or other investments, and then put it into real estate to sort of stabilize things. And real estate's a great investment because, obviously you can enjoy it, but it's also uh, solid in terms of investment. And it's all pretty much everything I got has got some waterfront. In fact, my new parcel's got frontage on both the Kinnick and the Matanuska. And then I got a place up by Chickaloon that's strictly on the Matanuska. But that's not a great investment because the erosion up there kind of lose it. All right, so into personal finance, kind of jumping right in. Um, this is why you guys need to figure out personal finance. You're encountering a whole different world than your parents had, and now you've got AI coming in as well. And I'm a huge proponent of AI. I don't think data centers are necessarily evil. I mean, when they can do some fairly fantastic things like some of the progress they're going to be making on cancers and other things that will literally be affecting my life and perhaps your life in the future. But yeah, the whole flock cameras and the crappy customer service and that part of AI and that the data centers. Anyway, we'll talk more about that. I'm not trying to pick a fight here, but those things are kind of getting a bad name. But there's more to it. Anyway, the effect though that they're going to have on your employment prospects, especially if you don't embrace AI, if you don't, have a strong aptitude in AI and you're trying to compete against it as a regular white collar employee, yeah, it's not going to go well for you. This is the K-shaped economy. This is the other aspect though. This predates AI, but um, wages and investments, this is kind of like the CEO salaries, and this is kind of like the not blue collar, but well, to a certain extent, unskilled labor maybe. Blue collar in terms of the trades, welders, plumbers, they're kind of holding their own. Their income is not declining, but unless you have precise skills, it's going to be more challenging. And a lot of this has to do with basically oversupply of labor. It's supply and demand. And so um, AI to a certain extent, but AI is even unclear. There are certain jobs like radiologists, for example. They thought they were going to be totally replaced by AI, but they've actually found that um, even though AI does great work in radiology, it's lower the cost to the point where there's so much more imaging done now, or there's actually more radiologists needed to assist in that whole program. And then the other part is, you know, um, open borders kind of thing. When you bring more people into any economy, it's going to have downward pressure on labor because there's frankly more people available, and also, unfortunately, more demand on housing. So it causes housing to go up. And anyway, and none of this works out well for you if you don't have things figured out. And whatever. I'm not going to get too political here, but it's people sometimes vote against their own best interest. Another big part of personal finance, and this is where one of the lessons that people don't necessarily learn till later in life, or even don't even recognize later in life. It's the power of compound interest. What compound interest, and we're going to get into proper slides here. Don't worry, it's not going to be totally overwhelming with these sort of disjointed concepts. But um, what I want to put right up front here the first day is just sort of the power of compound interest. So don't worry about these sort of eye chart slides. There's going to be more in your actual, um, in the attachments connected to Blackboard. But that first one was 5%, 8%, and here's one with 10%. 10% realistically is the kind of return you can achieve in the stock market traditionally. I mean, that's going back a century. And people who invest in the stock market, well, what happens with compound interest is, let's say you get this 10% and it's accrues over a year. Well, the following year, let's say you start out with 100,000, you earn 10% on it. And ideally you're compounding daily, but let's say you just compound annually, meaning the interest is added to your principal's the amount of money you start out with. It's added once a year. So going into the second year, you have 110,000. Going into you know the following year, you're earning 10% on 110,000. So whatever, you get 11,000 or whatever details. And anyway, these numbers just explode. So that's why these graphs and these totals are included here. And so I think I've blown up one here. So these models, I haven't really explained the model, but what it is it's set up um, for somebody who starts putting away money at age 18. Now I realize most of us have delayed savings since you're going to college, or you're not jumping into the labor force right at 18. But if you could, if this was actually set up for a military type example. So, somebody who's enlisted and jumps right into the military at age 18, it's conceivable that they could start saving. And this model is based upon putting away $500 per month for every month except for maybe December. Anyway, you put away $5,500 per year. So that's like $500 per month for 11 months. And if you do that, you would end up by age 65 having put away 273,500. So that's just that $500 per month times all those different years. But this is the interesting part. Because of compound interest at 10%, that 273,000, those total dollars you invested, that ends up being worth 5.3 million bucks. And your return on investment, even though it was only 10% per year, but because it compounded, like I'm saying, it ended up almost 2,000%. So you can get by on that. You're not going to be a greeter at Walmart. You're going to be fairly comfortable. But you had to start when you were your early. If you wait till age 27, yeah, you're looking at half as much money because it didn't have these years to work on it. The compounding interest, small amounts of money, but given large amounts of time and the higher interest rate, the better. Um, that's pretty cool. So anyway, some people think, oh, I don't need to worry about retirement. I'm going to have a pension. Yeah, probably not. They think, oh, I've got Social Security. It's pretty grim existence. I've had people work for me who, just get their Social Security in addition to what I pay them to work at the campground for me, and they weren't really enjoying those elder years. And whatever, I paid them what I could at the campground, but it was a seasonal business, and they weren't traveling, and they were in fear of medical problems, and it just wasn't really a comfortable life for them. So the thing about money, it's not about greed. If some people think, oh, you're obsessing about money. Well, if you don't worry about money, you will end up worrying about money a lot. It's going to rule your life. It's going to influence all your decisions. And like I mentioned, working for Booz Allen, it was soul crushing. It was horrific, and uh, I didn't like it, and so I quit because I put away enough money to where I could say, yeah, take this job and shove it kind of thing. And I did, and it was awesome. So, it's that liberty of not being job locked. Now, again, getting back to the K-shaped economy and all the other challenges that are going on, things have changed a lot. If you look back in the 50s, um, uh, just say your typical married couple, they could get by in a single income, and they had a house and maybe a car, but they took a vacation every year, and but only one member of the family worked. And then I don't know, 60s, 70s, all of a sudden both started working, but now they're kind of rolling in it. And into the 80s, they were yuppies, so they were both working, but they had a proportional amount of money and it wasn't bad. And then into the 90s, things started trimming down. Now, both people are working and they're scraping by. They're living a lower standard of living. And this isn't unique to the United States. I lived in Spain for, oh, I don't know. I had a house there. I still got a house in Germany, but um, you would look in these old Spanish homes. The home I owned, it had maids' quarters in it. Nobody in Spain can afford to have a maid anymore. They're all just scraping by like everybody else. So it's just the living standard or the amount of money that it takes and the wages. Wages, people think, oh, $20 an hour or $30 an hour or whatever minimum wage needs to be higher. That is not the answer. It's supply and demand. Yeah, the wage, you know, relative to inflation, it ought to be up in the 30s. And I'm not advocating a minimum wage. I'm not advocating something forced. It needs to be driven by real economics, supply and demand, and not an artificial wage. But anyway, we'll talk more about that before or later. Um, Before I actually jump into the chapter, let me show you if I can get in there. Um, I want to look at the syllabus. This should be it. Okay, so we're fall 2026, correct CRN. I'm reachable by the cell phone number, obviously by the email as well. Um, Introduction, budgeting, income. So, where do you get money to invest? Well, it's by living within your means. If you're spending more than you're taking in, you're not going to be able to invest. And if you can't invest, then you're trying to get wealthy by hourly wages or whatever. The you don't have to, you may not end up a wealthy person, but um, people do not get wealthy by working for it. They generate, we live in a capitalist system. They generate capital that they invest, And then at a certain point, their money is working harder than they are. You can't trying to outwork and no, you need to generate wealth, perhaps through hourly wages and the rest of it, or generate, investment uh, money and buy assets, and then those assets will generate the wealth. Anyway, the book, you do not need any fancy book. You could probably go on eBay, Amazon, whatever, get an older edition, be just fine. You don't need all the extra, you know, add-ons of charges they're trying to put you down with. No prerequisites, asynchronous, meaning the YouTube comes out because it's obviously you're taking a distance course because we all can't be in the classroom at the same time, so it's not really fair to have mandatory set times. Grading for the exams, um, homework's done as a batch assignment before the midterm and then before the final. There is a term project that you'll hate, but you're going to have to come up with a financial plan for yourself. So and again, it's don't do some AI slop, some chat GPT stuff. It's just not worth it. It's got to be tailored to your specific situation. It's your financial plan. So some generic plan is going to be completely transparent that this is not your situation. And again, when I mean your situation, it's I don't want your personal details. For the most part, you're going to be we'll go more in detail on this, but you're going to be coming up with your financial plan for later in life. So it's more of a forecast. So it's not your for most of you, it's not your specific details now. Participation, there'll be a video, short one in addition to this, just sort of a clip or something, and it'll cover a relevant topic, and you'll just write a sentence saying, "Oh yeah, that was insightful," or "That was garbage," but not like a. It's not so much a homework assignment as is just a check in to qualify for participation. So this is his personal finance term project. It's just a written page, 4 to 5 pages, um, and we're going to talk about things in class, and in terms of life insurance, in terms of purchasing vehicles, purchasing homes, investment plans, things like that. There's ways to do it, especially some of you may already have 401ks, 403bs, thrift savings plans, a military thing. But anyway, it's they're tax deferred investment vehicles, but you may already have those things at work. If not, you probably will at some point. Um, Like I say, the video will be out once a week. Homework will be done in this batch assignment. What else? Schedule. These are the topics we're going to cover. The syllabus is out there and posted. I hate when people scroll when you're trying to read it. My apologies, but that's kind of the nature of this slide. So, anyway, second half, we'll talk about investing. So, the first part is about how to, avoid pitfalls, avoid things that are going to prevent you from living within your means. You live within your means, and then you have um, excess money, and that's the money you're going to invest. And when you invest that money, then you know life is going to be good. Um, all the different elements of the syllabus. So pretty straightforward. Um, Big highlights are midterm and the final, both on Blackboard. Homework done in a batch, so don't stress if you can't get the book right off. You won't need it for a little while. The quicker you can get it, the better. You don't need any extras with the book, and in that term project, just do it. I mean, it should again be something that's useful to you because you're going to be able to perhaps come up with a plan and a template for when you get to that point in life. If you're not there, if you're a traditional student right now and you're not really thinking about, you know, buying life insurance, and for just a kind of a quick advice, you only need life insurance at certain times in your life, and it's not a huge deal for the most part. So anyway, what else? Okay, overview of a financial plan. So this is kind of the term paper. Uh, just some kind of definitions: personal finance, spending, financing. Believe it or not, there's some students I'll have that are like finance students, and they're so focused on making money for the company and taking care of that. And you look at their own finances, and they're just a mess. It's like the elements of personal finance are not the same as corporate type stuff. There's different plans, different advantages. Um, a real big thing, and this isn't the only course that you'll hear about opportunity cost, but opportunity cost is huge. This is kind of why people don't live within their means. If you buy a new car every 3 years, it's going to be really difficult to get ahead financially. Yeah, if you live in the valley and you got to drive in Anchorage and you're burning through the cars and all that other stuff. Yeah, but do you have to buy the brand new one? Can you are there different ways? Because it's just uh, cars are not investments, vehicles are not investments. But anyway, my point in opportunity cost is if you're doing one thing, you can't be doing the other. You know, if you're spending, $700 a month on a vehicle or 1,000 a month on a vehicle, that's $1,000 a month that's not available for investing. If you spend 500 on a vehicle, conceivably that would free up 500 for investing. And the way you need to think about investing and saving is that it's an expense. You know, you want to get to the point where you have a certain amount of your available money set up ideally automatically to go from your paycheck on the first day you get that paycheck, and just like you allot money to, paying your cell phone bill or your rent or what have you, you should also have, some percentage, maybe 10%, 15% going into savings. And I don't mean holding it in cash. I mean, you cash is, we'll talk more about this, but it should be, um, in a investment that's perhaps going to get you that 10% so that we can get on that train to start generating wealth. Anyway, um, every spending decision has an opportunity cost. So we kind of hit that already. Financial advisors, oof, yeah, this is on the internet, it's especially bad. Um, some of these guys report or sometimes they're salesmen on commission, even worse. They're giving you biased advice. But if you can find a kind of a fee for services that you hire, like, on an hourly rate, like a lawyer or something like that, and they give you fiduciary, unbiased advice, that can be useful. And maybe, you might find you have a knack for it, and do that yourself. There is a need for that unbiased advice. Unfortunately, most people, I actually um, got hired once as a stockbroker back when they had such a thing before, everything was kind of online. And I was expecting an interview where we talk about different things related to the stock market. Oh no, the guy just wanted to know, what sports I was involved in, like tennis or golf, or how I could, you know, basically capitalize on those relationships to get clients. And I told him, "Ah, I like to run and I go backpacking." He was like, no, no, he didn't like anything. It was solo. You needed to be out there schmoozing and taking advantage of your friends. And anyways, I had lost a lot of respect for him, and what little bit of respect for him I lost even more once I started dealing with these guys out in the field. In fact, I've got a guy right now. They call me and they want to discuss my finances. Yeah, whatever. But this guy was like a stock advisor, and he's like, oh, Nvidia, huh? Yeah, they're kind of a new company. I'm like, I invested in Nvidia a long time ago, and this guy's acting like it was like some upstart company. I mean, I bought Nvidia. I bought and sold it a bunch of times, but originally I bought this stuff for $37 a share, and it's now, I don't know, a couple grand. I mean, I wish I would have kept those 30 cents. It's kind of like Bitcoin. I bought some Bitcoin for bought a couple of them back in the day for 700 a piece. And when they got to 2600, I sold one. I thought, oh man, four times my money. I'm doing great. I kept the other one, thank God. And I've bought some others since. So I'm doing all right. I love crypto, but it's not for everybody. So, all right. As we stray again. Components of financial plan, budgeting and tax planning. So, yep, tax planning, everything has tax consequences. So it's not only, generating money, but it's holding on to it. Managing your liquidity. Liquidity means how you deal with cash. You want to keep your money invested, but you need some cash on hand to cover bills and basic expenses. You can't have it all invested or you will not have enough liquidity to cover your current expenses. Financing large purchases, different ways to do it. Not all debt is bad. Some debt is great. Debt on, I've got real estate debt, but I'm a farmer technically, so I get low interest rates. The interest rate I pay is less than what the asset appreciates for. So that's smart. When they say pay off all your debt, no, no, not when it's low interest rate against an appreciating asset. Now, if it's credit card debt, oh my God, you can't keep up. You're into the 20s. That's horrible debt. So not all debt is the same. Protecting your assets, yeah, insurance and also different things you can do to avoid, lawsuits, legal actions. Investing your money, we'll talk about that, and planning your retirement and estate. So estate is after you pass, retirement's when you're still going. But the thing about planning for your retirement and saving for your retirement, there are significant ways that you can use that money when you're still, um, you know, whatever. I've bought a tremendous amount of property and done other things by borrowing against my retirement, even though, my 401k, for example, and I, I bought, you know, had I had a I had a couple chunks of property that were part of my 401k, and and theoretically I couldn't benefit from them. But if you look at the actual registration, it said for the benefit of, and it was just characterized rather than sitting in a account. I prefer to speculate in some real estate. Anyway, budget planning, process forecasting. Yep, yep, yep. Assets are what you own, liabilities are what you owe, and net worth is the difference between those two. So if you look at somebody and you go, wow, that person's, quite quite rich. Look at the size of that house. But if it's all owned in debt, I mean, he's still getting to enjoy the nice house, but his net worth might not be what you think it is because it's all a liability. Very little bit is in equity. So, but again, not all debt is bad. High interest debt um, is very bad. Low interest debt is kind of useful. Um, how budgeting affects your savings. So, yeah, big savers, big spenders. A lot of people are just struggling just even to get by. But you got to be able to live within your means. You got to be able to control some of those outlays that really don't add that much value to your life. When you spend whatever amount of money on something, did it make your life, you spend $500 on something, is your life $500 better or is it, going towards interest or some useless, subscription or something like that. So liquidity, again, liquidity deals with cash, access to cash, and money management's how you keep the amount of money you need. You want most of your money invested. Holding cash, like in a savings account or something like that, I mean, they call it a savings account, but the interest rate you're receiving on that, some fractional percent or a couple percent, it's not keeping up with inflation. So it's like, holding cash is like hoarding vegetables or something like that that are just basically rotting away. Inflation does not decrease the amount of money you have, but it decreases the buying power. If you have $100 and you put it in a mattress, 10 years from now, you'll still have $100, but what can you buy with it? Not $100 worth of stuff, not in today's dollars. So that's why you can't really hold cash. You need enough to get by, you need the liquidity, but any more than that, mm-mm. Credit management, all sorts of ways to work that. Um, I'm a big fan of credit cards. I very rarely use cash, but I'm a convenience user. I don't carry a balance. Pay off the balance every month, and you know you can use credit cards forever. If you carry a balance, not a good thing, but it can help in terms of liquidity. You don't maybe need to keep as much cash on hand because you can put it on the card and it makes things easier. Plus, in order to get good deals on certain things, you have to use credit card. You try and buy an airline ticket for cash or a rental car for cash or go to a hotel. They're going to make you put down a deposit or something. It's just not done. So you got to figure that out to make sure that you there's two types of people in the world. There's people who pay interest and people who earn interest. You want to be one of the people who earns interest. And using credit cards, if you pay them off every month, you're not paying interest. But miss a payment, carry a balance, and you're paying a lot of interest. So managing your liquidity, yep. And so a lot of things, a lot of things you might have in like some emergency fund in case the vehicle breaks or whatever. If the vehicle breaks, you're probably going to put it on a credit card. So your liquidity problem is you need to get that money in cash before the credit card statement comes due. You don't necessarily need it today, you need it within a matter of weeks, which is an easier problem to handle. Maybe you can keep the money invested and not have it just sitting there idle in an account. Loans for large expenditures. So it depends on certain things. So one fatal thing is, a lot of people take out fairly excessive student loans, and so it delays their savings. So it's a good investment to get your degree especially if it's something useful, but try to minimize the amount you take out. Now, a car loan and a house, these should not even be in the same sense. House loans, property, that's how it's done. Car loans, a lot of times you should, but do not be one of these people who's just like going to have a car payment their entire life. I mean, I do all right. I've got a fair amount of property and stuff, but my primary vehicle is a 98 4Runner, and I couldn't be happier. I wouldn't have a new car. I hate, I was in Germany last week and oh my God, I had one a hybrid Chinese. It was a MG, whatever. It was horrible. Just just constantly making noise and beeping and I wanted my forerunner. Managing loans. How much can you afford to borrow? Determining maturity of loans, selecting the loan. So we'll talk more about loans and the different purposes. Um, Generally, you can afford to borrow more than you want to. I mean, they will let you get pretty damn far in debt, and you'll be sort of a slave to that credit card company or the, you know, big auto company, but don't do that. Um, Now, if it's a appreciating asset and an asset that's going to appreciate at a higher rate than your interest rate is, yeah, giddy up. But if it's credit card interest, there's just no way you can get by in that process. Insurance planning, auto insurance is something you need. You know, that's a legal requirement. Homeowners insurance, usually a condition of the mortgage, so you're going to have those. But there's different ways to do it, you know, different limits. Um, Health insurance, whew, you know, this is a political issue. It's neither party really wants a solution because they prefer a campaign issue rather than a solution. So they'll want to talk about, you know, single payer or private or anyway, but they're by design are not looking for agreement or a better system because problems are it gives them plenty of fodder to run on. Disability and life insurance protect your income. So disability insurance, you know, in case you get hurt on the job, there are different policies. Life insurance, so life insurance is kind of unique, and it's we'll talk about different types. Number one, um, you know, I'll tell you just right up front, you can get very inexpensive term life policies, not a whole life policy that you could pretty much buy online. I've done it a number of times and when I needed it, you know, when I was younger and I had kids, and a lot of people depended upon me, but now I've got assets. Kids are grown up. I don't need life insurance. Don't want it. I would use that money. It's opportunity cost. I would use that money that I'd be paying life insurance and invest it. And the kids will end up far better because they'll be left with more. Anyway, plan for investing. Funds beyond what you need to maintain your liquidity should be invested. Need is a key word. A lot of people say, yeah, I've got no money left to invest because they have all these needs. Sometimes those needs might be wants. If you truly get it down to needs, you should have some left. Earn a high return. Yep. Stocks, bonds, mutual funds, real estate, crypto. Risk. It's funny. The next word is risk. I'm not saying there, and crypto is a big span of things. I'm, I think if the cycle ever improves, I'm going to pretty much get rid of everything but my Bitcoin. I've got Ethereum and Sol and Sui and then a bunch of shrapnel. But no, Bitcoin does just fine. Manage investments to keep risk at a tolerable level. And that's a tolerable level for you. If they're the kind of person that panics, especially obviously don't ever consider doing crypto if you can't control your toleration, meaning selling at the bottom. I've round trip stuff, meaning I've gone up to the top and then back down, and I think now we're hopefully going back up. But if you're the kind of person who's gonna buy high and sell low, um, yeah, you're gonna get clobbered. Investing is just I think it's fascinating because it's really human nature. I mean, where else? Right now, people are buying Bitcoin because the price is going up. That's so. I mean, I'm tempted to do it myself, but that is so counterintuitive. If a store if a store is raising their prices on things, is that when you go to run out to buy something, or do you wait till there's a sale? No, but people would when Bitcoin's trolling along, it was down, I don't know, 58,000 a while ago. I bought a little bit, but it was painful, but it was the thing to do. You have to. But when it's going up, that's when everybody gets this FOMO, fear of missing out, and they all want to jump in at the top, and then they get beat down and they're confused. Anyway, insurance planning, retirement, estate planning. So this is, and especially again, not to get on the AI bandwagon here, but they're talking about some pretty substantial advances, especially like in terms of things like cancer, um, that may put you in the retirement process for longer. So you got to have a little bit more money set aside. And then when you eventually pass. Um, your estate is how things are done after you're gone. Building your financial plan. Yep. Enhance your net worth. So that's the assets with compared to liabilities. Build your wealth. Inflows, outflows. So this is just kind of a broad overview. We'll go through more specifics each week. Components of cash flows. So these are all things you need to do to figure out your budget. Yep. Budgeting is just how you're going to sort that money out. Again, it doesn't need to be perfect. It's a forecast. You try and live within it, but it gives you some guidelines. Yeah. Liquidity, so access to cash. Again, though, the only thing worse than not having enough cash is having too much cash, having money just sit there and not grow for you, and worse, be deflated. Lease a car, probably not. Uh, That's comes up now and again. Borrow money to purchase a car. This gets back to needs versus wants. Get the car you need, not necessarily the car you want, at least until you get your other um, things settled. But the other thing about paying yourself first, let's say you pay yourself first, you get 15% of your income, 15% of your paycheck, and you put that into your savings plan, your retirement plan, your investment plan, whatever you want to call it, and you still have enough money left. Maybe you can do that, but you've paid yourself first. You've taken care of your investments before you started making elective purchases. Should you borrow money to purchase a home? Typically, always, because the delay, a home is an appreciating asset. And so when you're borrowing money against it, plus the way things are set up with taxes, it's tax, the interest is deductible. Anyway, these are just a few questions. We don't need to go through them all, but um, we'll talk in detail about different types of insurance and how to protect yourself. If you're going to run a business or something, different business formation type things. Personal investing. And we'll look at the different investment options. Things change all the time, but and you can sort of start small and maybe you may find it interesting. You may want to just kind of a hands-off approach, but it does kind of help to know the underlying thing. So if you are going to turn your investing over to somebody else, if you're going to trust somebody else with that responsibility, um, it does help to at least understand the fundamentals so you can tell um, whether that person is legit or ripping you off. And then retirement estate planning. Again, the amount of money you put away towards retirement, and a lot of people, hopefully you'll find that you're working throughout your life. It's something you want to do. You're not dreaming of retirement because you hate your job that much. So maybe your retirement isn't really a traditional retirement. You're just going to transition to the job you didn't like to a job that you always wanted. But the thought of just sitting around and golfing or whatever, that might appeal to some people, but not so much. I work harder. I'm theoretically retired now, and I'm busier than I was when I was working. That's for sure. Doo-doo. And I think we're getting close to the end. So source of cash, use of cash. Some of the stuff is pretty common sense. Yeah, different ways to get money, but we're not going to go there. Um, Ideally, you're going to have a good plan and you're generating money. You're not, this person is clearly not living within their means. Cash in an insurance policy. Yeah, if you've got an insurance policy with a cash value, you screwed up. Um, I never have had one of those policies. And then selling your investments, that it's there's going to be an impact. Uses of cash and make more investments. So these slides are kind of generic. I just sort of added them in just to give it a bit of a format tonight, but we might skip a few more of these. The exam itself, the way I do the exam is pretty straightforward. I'll go through, review the questions, and hit the high points. So don't worry about trying to study each little detail. There'll be a large review before the exam. Obviously, things are interrelated. The psychology bit of it is pretty interesting, though. I find it fascinating the way prices on items move around in the stock market. What causes the swings? Because it's all based upon psychology. And the fact that AI is getting involved, the AI models are just they've done is studied um, other people's examples, so it's filled with the same weaknesses of basically human psychology. It's no different. It doesn't think any more rationally because all the models are based upon examples derived from human behavior. So assess your own spending. Yeah, some people tend to spend everything they got. Other people tend to save. Somewhere in the middle is some sense of moderation and balance. Anyway, a budget will help you through a lot of these aspects. Okay, and so the homework, again, this will all be turned in as a batch assignment several weeks down the road. So you look on the syllabus, you see when the midterm is, and that's when it's going to go. So I'll put the Excel spreadsheets out there. I think we already went through this example. So again, you're going to see 5,500 per year, start at age 24, 10%, ends up being 5.3 million. I mean, it's inconceivable because we just don't think exponentially like that. Anyway, that's about it. That'll be the first week kind of concluded here. Um, Next week will be a little more specific, a little more structured, but today we talked about the syllabus. We talked about the basic outline for the course. Let me know if you have any problems. Don't stress if you don't have the textbook. And it, if you're paying full price for a brand new textbook, you know, that's one way you could make a smart personal finance decision and maybe not do that. But up to you. Good night.